Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first installment of Pearl Institute Presents. I am Phil Perlman. I'm your host. Today, first of all, by the way, I want to bestow upon you all positive vibrations, positive energies to you, everybody. Okay, we've gotten that out of the way. What I'd like to begin with, the first installment is called Flip the Switch or Flip the Script. Either flip the script or flip the switch, or we may call it something entirely different. Not sure yet. But what I want to talk to you about, and this is something that is near and dear to the Pearl Institute, near and dear to my heart, my own experience, and that is that we have the capacity as human beings to make changes to who we are that are profound and positive at any age. So what I mean by that is that you could be doing something, you could be in like this negative loop for half of your life. You could be 30 years old, you could be 40 years old, you could be 50 years old, you could be 60 years old. And you could be doing something that is causing you misery, that is holding you up, that is holding you back. And then one morning you can wake up and you can decide to change, and you can change that thing, that part of you, that way that you see yourself, the thing that you think about yourself when you think about yourself. You can change it. Even when you're 50, even when you're 60, even when you're 70. It's a profound thing, and I want to talk a little bit more about it today. Okay. Really, the way that I see this is in terms of flexibility, right? This is a flexibility. So let's talk about flexibilities. Let's talk about the flexibilities for a moment, okay? Number one, when I say the word flexibility, when anybody says the word flexibility, we think of really one thing, right? We think of physical or kinesthetic flexibility. And that is, Simone Biles. It's going to be the Summer Olympics soon, by the way, right? We're going we got like 3, 4, 5 months. Summer Olympics, Simone Biles doing this thing where she flips and then she flips again and then she dismounts and she does a spiral and then boom, she sticks the landing. She's freaking awesome. That is physical flexibility. And it's not just flexibility is made up. It's not just bendiness. It's made up of multiple components. And there's an important reason why we're talking about that. And the components are bendiness. It's a part of it, right? Strength, control, and the connection between the mind and the body, right? It's like our brain is telling us what to do and we're doing it. It's like a coordination thing. So there's multiple elements: balance, strength, coordination, bendiness. Multiple components goes in to physical flexibility. One other thing that we know about physical flexibility, and here's like the little beautiful dime. One thing that we know about it is that we know that we can control to a degree, we can enhance to a degree our own flexibility. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that by practicing. We do that by, balancing and stretching and moving, right? So, in other words, let's say I was like the most inflexible person in the universe. On a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 1, right? And I started doing yoga. I just started going to yoga, or I started doing a series of stretches every single morning, morning in, morning out. Maybe I wouldn't go to a 10. Maybe I wouldn't go to Simone Biles, but I could definitely get to like a 4 over time, so I can make myself more flexible. And that is me changing my level of physical flexibility. That is me increasing that. That is me changing it in a fundamental manner. There was a day where I could not do a full body squat and just stay there. And I just started practicing that. And now I could just go down and squat. You're not even going to be able to see me, but I'm all the way down here. Hello, I am squatting all the way down. I am like lower than a catcher. My butt is almost on the floor, and I could just stay here for a while, right? It's the garland pose is what the yogi people call it. Okay, so I could do that And I couldn't do that at first. Like I developed that skill and some other skills that are flexibility based. And it's awesome, right? So that is the baseline physical, kinesthetic, whatever you want to call it, Simone Biles flexibility. We have control over that. And it is also true, a final truth about that, that the more flexible we are, the healthier we are. We know that to be a fact. The more bendy, the more we can snap back, the more resilient we become, the more we can move into, climb a mountain or maneuver through something that is tricky. All of that stuff, right? Keeps us young, healthier. We're going to live longer. We're going to live better life. Physical flexibility. Second, now let's talk about cognitive, and we know it's healthy. Now let's talk about cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is something that most of you are probably also familiar with, especially those involved with markets. It's been attributed to Keynes, but he didn't actually say it from what I understand. There's this old phrase that goes, this old saw, this old market saw that goes something like, when the facts change, I change my opinion. What do you do, good sir? I think it was attributed to Keynes. I don't think he actually said it. That is an example of cognitive flexibility, right? So if a story changes, if the narrative changes, if the earning outlook changes, if the technicals change, however you're approaching the market, if you're a value investor, if you're a technician, maybe something breaks down through a support level or whatever. When that type of thing happens and it changes, well, your opinion changes, your position changes. And if you're unable, let's say you hold on to it, let's say you stick to it and you say, oh man, but I don't want to let this go. That would be cognitive rigidity, not cognitive flexibility. So what we want to practice as market participants and in life, and by the way, there's all kinds of studies from the psychology realm that show that people who are flexible thinkers, that are cognitively flexible, have a tendency to be happier people and to have better relationships and to live longer lives, to suffer from depression and anxiety less often. So that we know that cognitive flexibility, the second type of flexibility that we're discussing, not physical flexibility, but cognitive flexibility, we know that a higher level of cognitive flexibility is healthier for the individual, you and me. So we know now that physical flexibility, the more of it you have, the better for you, the more bendy you are, the more control that you have, the more the more stronger you are, the more balance you have, what Peter Attia calls stability, the more stability that you have, probably the less likely you are when you get older to fall and break your hip, all of that kind of stuff. Physical cognitive flexibility. Those are the two types of flexibilities that we're very aware of. And now we're going to get to the third type of flexibility. Nobody really talks about it. I may have made it up. I'm not sure. I think I made it up. And that is what I call core self flexibility. Boom. Core self flexibility goes like this. Not only do we have the capacity to become more bendy and more physically flexible with practice, and not only do we have the capacity to become more cognitively flexible with practice, as a matter of fact, very experienced, successful traders, market participants have a tendency to be more cognitively flexible. Hey, they'll take a loss faster than people who are novices. So with experience, they gain capacity there. But we also, and this is big, we also have this capacity to be able to change components of our core self with practice. And I call that core self flexibility. So if there's something about ourselves that we don't like, if there's something about ourselves that is costing us, if there's something about ourselves that is making our life worse than it could be, we could change that thing. And that is such an important concept. And now we're going to talk about that a little bit. Core self flexibility. Now, this is so foreign to us because historically we've lived in a world where we haven't bought into this idea that we can change who we are, right? You go back 100, 150 years, it was a lot harder that before the constructivist revolution, the cognitive revolution, before that time, we lived in this world where philosophers and scientists accepted that there was a certain level of determinism. That was a word, determinism, that just meant that everything was preordained, everything was predetermined. And that was really left over from this idea of divine right, going back hundreds of years in Europe. There was this idea that the king was sort of writ by God to be, the king and to tell you what to do, and you had to go along with it. And that really stayed very, very true through World War One, right? You get drafted into World War One, you go, and great chance that you die, or great chance that you suffer PTSD, and you really don't have that much choice about it. But something happened in the middle part of last century, of the 20th century. And it was the beginning of this cognitive revolution. And it was the beginning of this post-deterministic world. It was the beginning of self-determinism. It was the beginning of constructivism. It was the beginning of this social cognitive revolution. And we've seen it accelerate since the advent of Web 2.0. Because Web 2.0, it was a physical manifestation of this, new constructivist reality. We could go online and we could express ourselves and we could build an audience based on the best ideas that we had. So all of a sudden we have more and more and more control over what our life path was going to be. And our life path is really just a manifestation of who we are. So we have more and more control over who we are. And so what do we do now? Okay, what do we do with that? Here's what we do. We start with a plan. We start with this one idea. We start with this simple, who would I really love to be in the future? Future Phil. I'm going to wait. I woke up this morning. I put on a pair of pants. I went to the John. I took a pee. I weighed myself. I brushed my teeth, right? There's a really good chance that 5 years from now, January 30th, 2029, I'm going to wake up and do almost the exact same thing, right? So there's a really good chance, 95 or more percent chance, I'm still going to be alive, still going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to be able to. So that future self is a real self. So I'm going to begin with that future self, and I'm going to say, hey, what is it that I would like? Who is it that I would like that future self to be? And I'm not going to do all of it at once. I'm not going to overwhelm myself. I'm just going to start with maybe one thing, right? And I'm going to say, okay, one thing that I'd like to be is, I'd like to be a person who is really efficient operator, right? So I've already done this in a lot of ways. One thing that I haven't done is I haven't made myself a more efficient operator. Okay, maybe I never will, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a try with you guys watching me and with me doing it here. I'm just going to become to the point where it's going to be part of my core self, part of who I am, part of my personality, part of my self schema is the fancy term that the social cognitive psychologists, scientists use to describe the way that we view ourselves. And I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to change this thing. Hey, I'm a pretty efficient operator. And maybe I won't become the most efficient operator in the world, but I will move from like kind of the 3.5 I am now to like a 6 to 7. I'm going to make a huge change in that way. So I'm going to see that. I'm going to see that future. I'm going to see that plan. I'm going to see that person that I'm becoming. And then I'm going to come back to now and I'm going to say, okay, what's the first thing I can do in that direction? Okay. And as a matter of fact, I did one thing, right? I did one thing. I made this thing right here. So what's happening now is I'm getting more and more clients and I'm starting to get busier, and me keeping track of the clients and when I meet with them is getting more difficult for me. So I just printed out this thing. And for February 1st, I'm starting this thing where I'm going to write the names of all my clients here. And then it's going to be like week 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to tape it to my desk over there. And that's just like this little strategy that's like a make me more organized, efficient strategy instead of me having to like go back and figure out when I met with whom throughout the last month. And then I go to my QuickBooks at the end of the month. I take this document, boom, just made myself more efficient. I'm becoming that more efficient person. And then maybe at the end of, March or April, I'll do one more thing. And then, August, I'll do one more thing. And that is how, in steps, we change who we are. We figure out who we want to be, one thing. Maybe with you, it's, hey, I want to become a healthy person, right? So where do you start with that? Maybe you just start with, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to become a healthy eater. Right now, I look at myself in the mirror. I talk to myself about who I am. I say, Phil, or Joe, or whoever's watching out there, I'm not a healthy eater. That's something. I'm a shit eater. I'm a grazer. I'm a late night snacker. I've heard all of it, right? So maybe it's like, I am a healthy eater. I'm becoming a healthy eater. 5 years from now, I'm going to look at myself. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to be a healthy eater. I'm going to look in that mirror. I'm going to say to myself, hey, I am a healthy eater. That's where it starts, right? That would be the first thing that you do. And then maybe you conquer that one. You start eating better and you start eating better. You say it to yourself. You say it to yourself. And then you go into the next thing. Hey, I'm going to be I'm an athlete. Maybe you start there. Maybe that's the first thing you do. Hey, I used to be an athlete when I was in high school. Going back to that. You start with one thing, and then you add another, then you add another, and then before you know it, you are that person that you want to be. You are able to say it becomes a part of your self schema, and you have enacted self-determinism in order to improve your core self flexibility. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back like either tomorrow or next week or 2 weeks from now with another episode. I think that I'm going to talk about stupid simplicity and how simple really, really, really the world is. If you have any questions or comments, you can, you have to be sure to like this and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want you to smash all of the buttons. Please smash the buttons. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube especially, I'll be there. I'll respond. You're the best. Adios.